Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. Just a few days ago, on May 22nd, Paramount Pictures released Passenger, a supernatural horror movie about a demon stalking a couple after they witness a horrible accident. The trailers led to significant hype and anticipation, though the reviews since its release have largely been mixed. I haven't seen it yet, and will likely wait until it releases on streaming. But it got me thinking about the urban legend it was inspired by. There are few things more mundane than driving. When we're young, we can't wait to get behind the wheel, pick up our friends, take our first road trip, all of it. As we get older though, driving can become more road, and road trips can feel more burdensome than exciting. One of the most famous urban legends, the killer in the backseat, adds some terrifying spice to a pretty routine task, forcing you not only to look in your back seat, but to check it carefully to make sure no one is hiding, waiting for the opportune time to strike. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore the scary story of the killer in the back seat. Is there a way to keep yourself safe? I'll share the story. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. One of the most well-known urban legends is the killer in the back seat, and it's exactly what it sounds like. And though there are slight variations, the story basically goes like this. One night, a woman went out for a night on the town with a few friends. She spent hours at a local bar, drinking, dancing, partying, and having a great time. Later that night, after the bar closed, she got in her car and made the long drive home on a deserted highway. While driving, she suddenly noticed a pair of headlights as a car pulled behind her, first in the distance, but then closer and closer. As the car reached her, the driver hit their turn signal, letting her know they were going to pass. But just as the car pulled alongside her, the driver swerved back behind, tailgating her with his high beams flashing. Nervous, the woman tried to ignore the driver and instead focused on getting home as quickly and safely as possible. Throughout the drive, the car behind her alternated between pulling alongside and pulling behind, 1 minute flashing the high beams and the next turning them off. Finally, after some time, the woman took the exit and prepared to arrive at her house. The car behind continued to follow closely. The car stopped at every red light and stop sign and followed the woman until she pulled into her driveway. Scared, the woman planned a quick exit strategy: run like hell for her front door and call the police. As she exited her vehicle, the driver in the other car did as well, and he immediately began screaming at her. "Lock the door immediately and call the police. Call 911. Within a few minutes, the police arrived and it all started to make horrible sense. The man in the car was not trying to attack the woman. Quite the opposite, in fact. He had been trying to save her life. As he pulled up initially behind her, and his headlights filled her car. He saw the silhouette of a man rising up from the back seat. He was holding a butcher knife, and he intended to stab the woman. The intermittent flashing of his high beams was to keep the killer in the back seat at bay. Other variations of the story include the woman stopping for gas and the station attendant calling her inside under the guise of having trouble processing her payment. Once there, he tells her there's someone in her back seat and that he's going to keep her safe and call the police. Another variation takes on a more supernatural tone, as the woman is stopped by a man covered in blood, and no matter where she goes, the man appears out of nowhere, banging on her windows. Once the man in the backseat is apprehended, it's revealed that the man she saw outside her window was a victim of the killer, who was trying to warn her. The killer in the backseat is believed to have first appeared in 1967, and it quickly caught on. What's fascinating, though, is that there are few official records of the legend actually being played out in real life. Carjackings are common for sure, but those usually involve the carjacker opening the driver's side door while the driver is behind the wheel. While researching, I came across a fascinating account that plays on the urban legend. And the thing is, it's hard to tell if it's a true story or just another creepypasta. I'll share it right after this quick ad break.
Sometimes, the monsters we should really be afraid of aren't the ones hiding in the dark. They're the ones that have been standing in front of us this entire time. My name is Rissa Montañez, and I'm the founder of Grave Moon Studios. Every monster has a story. We get to tell it. Coming soon to wherever you listen to podcasts.
HighBeams, written by FearsomeFrights. It was 9:30 when my shift at the diner ended. It's not any place specifically you'd know, though you'd be forgiven for confusing it for a Waffle House, given the abundance of cheap, greasy food and drunk clientele. The only thing distinguishing our location was that our doors closed at 10. It was a cold night in October. The winds felt out of place for the fall season with the sharp way they bit into my skin. Usually, the low temperatures in Grand tended to hover around the mid-50s. Tonight felt particularly frigid, even bundled up in the warm confines of my jacket. I hurried through the lot outside the diner, passing by several vehicles. When I made it to my car at the far end, I was quick to put the key in the ignition. My car was a special edition Subaru Legacy. The only thing special about it was that it was by only the grace of God that my radiator and engine were still operational, given the car was a little over 2 decades old. When you turned the key, the engine would knock. My father said it was indicative of worn-out bearings. It could be an engine getting ready to declare sayonara before it crapped out one final time and departed for car heaven, or perhaps car hell, given its rough condition. I knew little about that, though. All I knew was that as a poor college student, I was having a difficult enough time as it was, scrambling to make ends meet with a part-time job at a diner. Regardless, whatever the solution, the answer involved money. Money I notably didn't have. The smart thing to do would be to purchase another used car, though in this economy, that sort of thing is far easier said than done. An even harder task than figuring out the financing for a replacement vehicle was getting this stubborn thing to turn on. The engine threatened to exhibit life, but would stop short of properly starting. It was about the 5th round when my engine found the energy to fight the good fight on this frigid night. The engine knocked fiercely, reverberating inside the hood for a few seconds before the noise steadied itself. I sighed in relief and backed out of my parking spot in the back of the lot. As I left, I couldn't help but notice something out of the corner of my eye. A man, a very rugged specimen of the male sex adorning a blue baseball cap and a grizzly beard, was approaching my vehicle at a brisk pace. Since I was the only one stationed at the back of the lot, it seemed odd that he was coming my way. I turned my head to acknowledge him. That's when he began to break out into a full-on run. My heart raced almost as fast as my car. I slammed the pedal down and sped out of the lot, the tires screeching loudly along the pavement as I veered to a sharp right. I was lucky the road didn't carry heavy traffic around this time of night. Where my eyes were focused on him, I was damn near lucky I hadn't plowed directly into someone else. I sped along the highway and tried to rationalize why this lumberjack-looking fellow had charged me. News reports of human trafficking came to mind, but it wasn't really anything you heard much about in a place as remote as Grant, Alabama. For crying out loud, we physically were so remote, one of the provinces within Grant was called Bucksnort. We were about as far from the Big Apple, or any real semblance of civilization, one could get. After a minute of driving, I slowed down, especially when I heard something in the engine rattle. This car wasn't designed for no races or wild chases, not with the amount of age it carried. Besides, I was alone. Safe. At least that's what I thought before I heard the blaring of a truck horn. An 18-wheeler was coming up behind me. Given I was the only other soul visible on this lonely 2-lane stretch of highway, it was clear they were honking at me. I prayed to God and kept moving. The big rig followed closely. We went down the road for 2 miles when suddenly my vision was obscured in a bright light. The trucker was flashing his high beams. I could barely see when he hit me with them. I nearly swerved off the road when he did it. After a few seconds, the mounted floodlights on his vehicle relented and the blinding rays ceased their assault on my eyes. I moved my car to the right lane to let him pass. He had no intention of doing so. His signal made that clear when he merged behind me. Drops of rain began to pour from the sky, lightly tapping my windshield. My car didn't handle well with slick roads. Fortunately, I wasn't too far from home, maybe another 7 miles. The fiery orange glow flooded the cabin of my car and I yelped. I fumbled in my purse, one hand on the wheel, one digging desperately for my phone. With my visibility being periodically robbed, I was already a hazard on the road. Might as well risk compounding the issue if it meant I could get in contact with the police. When the high beams vanished, I managed to pull out my phone and dial 911. The operator answered after 2 rings. 911, what's your emergency? The man that answered the call sounded bored out of his mind, like he'd rather be anywhere else on a Saturday night. I didn't care if he was bored, entertained, or playing with himself. As long as he could send someone out, that's all I cared about in the end. There's a maniac tailgating me, I said. The operator's voice clipped, though from what I could understand of the roboticized sound coming out of his end of the line, I could tell from his tone he remained unenthused. Ma'am, you've called an emergency line. You don't understand. I was leaving work and this man started chasing me. I think he's trying to hurt me. The operator fell silent for a few seconds. For a moment, between the rainy weather and the flaky signal, I thought I'd lost him. His voice reemerged a few seconds later. Where are you? I rattled off the highway number I was driving on and told him my home address. I'll get an officer dispatched in the area. ETA should be around 10 minutes. 10 minutes. 600 seconds. Toss whatever metric you wanted to use to measure it out. With that big rig riding close behind me and the driver intermittently blinding me when they felt like getting their rocks off, it might as well have spanned an eternity. I was going to be lucky I didn't crash into a guardrail or land myself in a ditch. Make that around 15 minutes, the operator clarified, his crackled voice twisting the knife deeper and deeper into me. I made the turn off the 2-lane highway. I didn't signal when I did it. I was hoping the sudden movement would have had my unwanted friend in the big rig blow past me. Ma'am, for a moment I believed it worked. No more blinding lights. The only sound was the operator fishing for a response and the pitter-patter of rain on my windshield. My sigh of relief became a choking noise lodged inside my throat as I saw the 18-wheeler backing up. It didn't turn on a dime, but he was moving fast enough. The road up ahead was windy with hairpin curves. I didn't know how long I'd have until those lights were upon me, till he was upon me. The phone clicked and the call abruptly ended. I cursed under my breath while my engine knocked like an irate person trying to beat down a door. My Subaru was rapidly approaching its limit. I had to think fast. These were my options. I could risk speeding and hope the engine would hold out till I made it to the house, or I could continue driving at a steady pace. If the first option proved successful, he might not see where my vehicle would vanish. If it didn't, my car might leave me stranded. That's assuming I didn't wreck myself taking a turn too fast. The other option would be safer, but I'd be visible to him, though with some of these curves, I feared if he hit me with the high beams again, I'd be at risk of crashing. Where the area of road ascended, one wrong turn would mean a long journey down. It would mean certain death. Taking a sharp intake of breath, I pulled out my phone and called my husband. The only answer I got was his voicemail urging me to leave a message at the tone. "Billy, there's a lunatic after me. I've called the cops. Please, please be ready. I'm only 2 minutes away." It wasn't the most inspiring call to action. My husband wasn't Billy Badass. He was more like Billy the Stamp Collector. Benign hobbies, soft-spoken, wouldn't hurt a fly. Still, I was counting on his presence to deter Mr. HighBeams behind me. It was a desperate ploy, but it was all I could think of on such short notice. I made the turn into the dirt trail that led to my driveway. As I was pulling in, the porch light flickered to life. Maybe. It might have been those high beams. They illuminated my cab in a flood of light, once more obscuring my vision. My husband, from what I could discern of the silhouette. Our dog Jasper, a black schnauzer with more bark than bite, darted out the door. I couldn't see the little guy, but I heard him. I stopped the car and shoved open the door. I bolted out of the seat, nearly tripping over my own feet with my frantic departure. Jasper started barking up a storm, even before the big rig came to a standstill. The door of it opened, and the bearded man stepped out of the vehicle. Strangely, my dog paid the trucker little mind. Jasper's eyes remained fixated on my Subaru. He began to snarl. "Get away from the car," the man bellowed. He pulled out a gun and pointed it at an angle, almost like he was aiming at my vehicle. Was this how my life was going to end? Shot dead when I was at the finish line, where I was supposed to be safe. My husband babbled. Sir, please, you don't have to do this." The trucker shook his head, and as he did, the sound of sirens began to blare in the distance. He didn't answer us. Instead, he lowered his gun into his holster and stood still as a statue, all while my dog continued snarling and barking at our vehicle. When the police came, guns drawn, he remained calm. "I'm not the one you want," he said. "The car. Search the car." Even to this day, I still remember in vivid detail what happened. When the police opened the rear driver door, there was a gaunt-looking man back there, crouched in the floorboard with a knife clenched in his hand. The wide, manic look lingering in his eyes remained far colder than the frigid winds blowing around us. The trucker explained later that he saw the man inside my vehicle wielding the blade. He must have snuck inside before my shift ended. Once the driver realized what was going on, he tried to intervene. Every time the person in the backseat had attempted to overpower me, to harm me, the trucker turned on his high beams. It scared my unknown passenger. The sight of the light made him hide. The police hadn't offered much in the way of details concerning who my stowaway was. Given the 6 inches worth of blade he held, Not much imagination was needed to map out what the strange man had planned to do to me. I learned on that cold, lonely October night to never judge a situation wholly by appearances. I was grateful to that truck driver. If it weren't for his persistence, I would probably not be alive today to share my story. You know, as with every urban legend, I often think about the quote-unquote moral of the story. On the surface, this one seems to be pretty straightforward. Be aware, maybe even hypervigilant, about your surroundings, because you never know who's lying in wait. But what's fascinating is that below the surface, there are two issues that come to mind. First, the legend itself is incredibly sexist. Without fail, the almost victim is always a woman, and the almost killer and the hero of the story are both men. In fact, the two men are foils of one another. The backseat rider is a killer hell-bent on harming the woman, and the driver is a savior intent on saving the woman's life. Both male characters are powerful, the killer in his devilish and evil ways, and the savior for his calmness in the face of harrowing danger. And the woman, well, she couldn't possibly save herself. There was no way for her to know what was going on, if not for the male savior warning her and saving the day. The truth is, these stories are often a time capsule, giving us a view into the culture and context in which they were born. And while the story may have us believe that women are helpless and inattentive without men, the reality is, thankfully, much different. Women, by tragic virtue of the harm they often suffer at the hands of men, are both aware and intuitive to potential danger, and they're both resilient and resourceful enough to take care of the issue without the intervention from a male savior. And second, in the retellings of the story where the killer's ethnicity is mentioned, and this is especially true in earlier recountings, the perpetrator is always black, and this is unequivocally racist at best. Something interesting. More modern variations of the legend involve gang members looking to kidnap or assault a woman as part of a gang initiation ritual. We see these things pop up on social media from time to time, and invariably, the perpetrators tend to be darker complected. And of course, the rescuer or savior is implied, by contrast, to be white. It's important for us to understand the damage these racist tropes can cause, because if we're not careful, we can easily believe and perpetuate stereotypes about other ethnic groups without reason or justification. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're left with this lingering question. What would you do if one night while driving, you discovered a person hiding in your back seat? I've shared the story. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.